I'm delighted to be joined by Lord Walney, former UK government advisor on extremism. Lord Walney, thank you so much for being on the programme today. My very first question has to be about these pro-Palestine marches. There are a number of people who have long called for them to stop happening. It seems to me the Met Police have voiced their concerns and are saying that we would rather these do not take place. The Home Secretary this morning, speaking on the BBC Today programme, seemed to not understand that the Met Police were concerned about these pro-Palestine marches and certainly did not say anything about stopping them. There's been a deafening silence from Sadiq Khan as well. Is it time that despite the Brits having a huge support for freedom of speech and freedom to assemble, that we look at these pro-Palestine marches as propaganda exercises for terrorism?
Yes, we do need to look at this. And I think the Home Secretary does understand the scale of the problem here, and I welcome the fact that she said this morning that she shouldn't go ahead. But the fact that at the moment politicians are pleading with organisers who frankly seem to have no interest in doing the right thing shows that the legal framework is not as it should be. And what I urge the government to do now is to look at the review which is sitting on their desk, which I published and delivered to them more than a year ago now, and they need to change the Public Order Act to give the police and the Home Secretary the power to say no to marches when they are clearly causing cumulative damage to communities like the Jewish community in Manchester and London, who are going to be living in fear at this weekend. At the moment, the law is such that the police can only recommend the power to stop a march if there is a threat of serious public disorder, effectively a riot. Now, I mean, I think on a layperson's interpretation, you could make an assessment that even that high threshold might be met at this weekend. But I understand why that needs to be a proper thought out thing, but it shouldn't take that. There should be the power for people to say, look, you know what, you've had so many of these marches, the Jewish community are hurting, the police resources are needed to protect Jews this weekend, you can't have your march.
Let's have a little look actually at what happened in Trafalgar Square last night. Now, at the very least, that to me looks like some sort of carnival of potential would-be terrorists. Now, my worry is not only about whether these things tip over into violence, but whether they also work as a recruitment drive for would-be radicals.
Sure, those images look pretty close to serious public disorder to me. And so, you know, let's actually hope that the police can look at this and recommend that the marches are called off on those grounds alone. I understand that these decisions can rub up against freedom of speech, and I think there can be a danger if you take too heavy-handed an approach that actually you end up with the kind of radicalizing effect that we all want to avoid. But this seems pretty clear-cut and common sense. Jewish people in major cities across the country have lived in fear, particularly since the 7th of October. That is being felt very acutely since the attack yesterday morning. There could be genuine concerns for the prospect of a copycat attack. The police need to be focused on that and not indulging this in having to have their many hours of police time diverted to indulge these people who want to make a stunt in support of Palestine and Gaza.
The problem I see as well is when you see how rabid some of these protesters are, you've made very important comments on especially legacy media's approach to what is going on in Gaza, almost, I would say, turning it into a cause célèbre, the fetishization of one conflict on planet Earth, which, frankly speaking, is very much taking place on religious ideological grounds. They're ignoring what's going on in Somalia, Sudan, other parts of the world. They're ignoring the slaughter of Christians in northern Nigeria. But for some reason, many people in legacy media seem to be obsessing over Gaza, seem to be obsessing over whether or not Israel is committing a genocide without looking at genocides that are actually taking place, and that this too is feeding into the narrative. It's not just people going onto Reddit and the dark web, linking up with Hamas operatives and going, wow, yeah, I want to go out and join the pro-Palestine cause now. They can get that information, quite frankly, if they just tune into the BBC.
There is something that is going deeply wrong in the UK and the West. And yes, I think that much of the mainstream media is guilty of fanning the flames of obsession about Israel, but they are reflecting the obsessive focus of the international community, where I think the United Nations has been pretty seriously corrupted by a virulent anti-Israel strain, to the point that it's really very hard, nay impossible, to get on within the UN unless you are showing your anti-Israel colours. And that has affected the UK Parliament, where the number of questions and debates that are focused on Israel far outstrips any other conflict. Now, what is happening in Gaza is deeply serious. It's alarming. It does deserve our attention, but this is an obsessive level of focus, and it is so often channeled to the idea that Israel is inherently evil, uniquely evil, and there is just something wrong about the people in charge of that. And there's also something wrong with those Jews in other countries who are supportive of the idea of a state of Israel. So it has directly bled into the anti-Semitism that is infecting our country, and we have all got a responsibility to push back against it now.
What staggers me as well, and I've been talking about this so far on the programme, it's the Green Party's conference right now, in conference season. Now, they have a deputy leader who goes by the name of Mohsin Ali, and he has, in times past, branded a Leeds rabbi, Zechariah Deutsch, as a creep, a lowlife and an animal after the October the 7th attacks in a video he has subsequently deleted. That rabbi was forced into hiding with his family. He put an image of himself and Bob Villan as his Facebook profile picture after Glastonbury. His response to the October the 7th massacre was white supremacist European settler colonialism must end. He's the deputy leader of a political party in this country. Now, they might not have many MPs. They've got enough of a following for me to be worried about. This man's about to turn up on a stage holding a microphone. I think he should be dragged down to police cells and questioned. What's going on there?
Well, I heard Zach Polanski responding, the leader of the Green Party, who is Jewish, and he talked about he growing up in Manchester, and he responded to the attacks yesterday, and it was what he said was moving. I have no doubt that it was heartfelt, but there is a question for him and other leaders within the Green Party as to why they are tolerating the stain of anti-Semitism, which was eventually drummed out of my old party, the Labour Party, when Corbyn went, largely drummed out. There are still some problems remaining, but much of it was transferred wholesale to the Green Party. And you can see the narrow electoral calculation. If the Greens want to be a dominant force, the dominant force on that kind of alternative left wing within this country, then at the moment, or for a long time, it has come with a badge of identity that has to be fully anti-Israel, and they don't want to dispute that. But the moral compromise that they are making by turning a blind eye or accepting some of the virulent anti-Semitism within their party is not acceptable. And the challenge to Mr. Polanski now is that if he is genuine about this, he will root out that from within his party.
He should sack that deputy leader, surely. Mohsin Ali, after putting such posts up, should have faced the forces of the law, in my opinion. It staggers me that these things aren't taking place. Finally, I've got to ask you, as the former UK government advisor on extremism, how perilous is our national situation today?
I do feel that we are in a genuinely perilous situation in the UK. The sense of threat and intimidation to particular communities, the intimidation faced by our members of parliament affects not only them, but the whole of the democratic process. Jews are living in fear this weekend. The vast majority of them were they were all deeply saddened by the tragedy. The vast majority of them were not surprised because they've seen the rising threat level, and they fear the return to the dark days that we thought as a civilized country and as a civilization in the West we had left behind us. And so this is a moment for our leaders to show a level of moral clarity that has often been lacking in recent years, to call out the threat from Islamist violence, from those who want to live in our country but do not want to abide by the rules and the decency that we have built up over many centuries. There has to be change from that is driven from the top within our country. Otherwise, people are going to remain more and more at risk, and the level of discontent within our communities is going to grow.
Yeah, I do fear that we've reached the 11th hour, and unfortunately all we're getting is the sort of normal vacuous platitudes from our political leaders. Lord Walney, thank you ever so much for being on the programme.